This past weekend, conservatives held their so-called Freedom Summit down here in the state of Florida, and there was lots of weirdness at the conference. I mean, let's be honest, it was a gaggle of conservatives, so of course there's weirdness. There was Chris Christie getting booed. There was other Republicans getting booed when they suggested Trump could end up in jail. But there was nothing weirder than Donald Trump himself, the supposedly only mentally competent person running for president, who got up on stage and told the audience that he won all 50 states in the 2020 presidential election. That's not an overstatement. That's not me taking his words out of context. He literally said, quote, "We won every state. We then did great in the election. We got 12 million more votes or so, 12 million more votes than we got the first time. The whole thing is a lie. The whole election is a lie." Now, the whole thing is a lie. Are you referring to the statement you had previously just made? Like, we won every state. By the way, the whole thing's a lie. Because if so, if you're referring to your claims as being a lie, then I got nothing to talk about because you'd be right about that. But we won all 50 states, Donald Trump claims. And then we went on to do great in the election, he says. So, little weird. Like, not only is it a lie that we won all 50 states, no, you didn't. But he says, then, after we won all 50 states, then we did great in the election. So are you not including winning all 50 states as part of the election? Like, is your brain seriously like that disconnected from itself that you don't even realize that winning all the states would have been part of the election? What this shows us, as we've seen in many different instances over the last couple weeks, is that there is something wrong with Donald Trump's brain. And the hilarity of it all is the fact that this all really started like kicking into high gear shortly after Donald Trump insisted he is the only mentally competent person running for president. And ever since he started down that path, it's like karma or a higher power, whatever you believe in, decided to be like, oh, really? Really? You're the only mentally competent one? How about from now on, you can't actually come up with a complete sentence that makes sense? Because that seems to be what happened to Donald Trump. But this is a big one. And again, it's not just that he lies. Look, we know he lies all the time. That's what he does. That's who he is. But now he's to the point where he is telling blatantly obvious lies that I guarantee you, even though his supporters didn't say a word about it at the event, I guarantee you there had to be a few people in the crowd that were like, wait a minute. I get that, yeah, I believe the election was stolen, but all 50, like that's not even possible. There had to have been a couple people in that audience that really gave it a second thought. Again, they didn't speak up, but there had to have been a few, even if they think the election was stolen, which it wasn't, they had to have known that that wasn't true, what Trump just said. The point is, his brain is deteriorating, and it's deteriorating at a rapid pace at this point. Like, we can't go more than like 2 to 3 days without Donald Trump saying something that should make you question his mental competency. Add into that, of course, the fact that way back when, when he first got elected by the Electoral College, you had psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health professionals. They actually put out a book called The Dangerous Case of Donald J. Trump, where they talked about all of these, alleged problems that he suffers from. Obviously, they couldn't make in-person diagnoses, so it's alleged, obviously, but they warned us back then, like, something's wrong with this guy. And here we are today seeing him get even worse. And I think a lot of it obviously has to do with the stress of the trial that he's currently in. We saw that on full display when he testified on Monday. But the stress of that trial, the stress of the 91 criminal charges against him, it's all getting to him, and his brain cannot function properly under that kind of stress. So we're going to see more incidents like this. We're going to see bigger lies. We're going to see bigger fabrications, more evidence that he's living in this alternative reality, because as he gets more scared and as he gets more desperate, his brain is trying to create this alternative reality to make himself feel better and feel protected. I'm not a mental health expert, but if I had to explain what was happening with him, that's probably what I'd go with. Hey everyone, this is Aspen. And did you know that for the low cost of $0 per day, you can subscribe to the Fair and Balanced YouTube channel? We also encourage you to like, comment, and share, but again, click that subscribe button and help Aspen not be so grumpy.
Let's just get more tonight on some of the key races and the 2024 race with Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie, who's also the former governor of the state of New Jersey. Governor Christie, in Ohio tonight, the big story is that voters have yet again voted to codify abortion rights there. Is the Republican Party on the wrong side of this issue when it comes to the average American voter?
Well, Abby, look, I think that, for 50 years, conservatives have been arguing that this was not a federal issue, that it should be decided state by state. I've certainly felt that way. And I think you got to let it be decided state by state. And that's exactly what's happening. And so the voters are getting their opportunity to speak. The Supreme Court took that away from voters for 50 years with Roe versus Wade. I support voters making these choices and states making these choices. And whatever the results are what the people want them to be. And that was my whole argument with Roe from the beginning in terms of what they did legally. They took this out of the hands of the people and put it in the hands of 9 justices on the Supreme Court. That was wrong. And now let each state make their own decisions. You're going to have great variation across the country in terms of what people want.
So back in 2015, you supported a 20-week federal abortion ban. I think you know as well as I do, a lot of folks on the right, some of these anti-abortion groups, they really do want this to come to the federal level. Likely, if there's a Republican president, if you were the Republican president, they would want to bring it to your desk. If they did that, given what we've seen tonight, would you vote or would you sign a bill that banned abortion at the federal level at any amount of weeks?
I think I just answered that, Abby. What I said was that, the people of the states should have the right to make this call. They have the right
just
to
to be
make this
clear,
call
so that's
now.
a no. You would not support.
Well, why don't you
would not sign
Abby,
anything at the federal level that bans abortion.
Abby, if you let me finish my answer, I'd be happy to give you a complete answer. What I'm saying to you is that I want this entire 50-state experiment to go forward. And let's see what all 50 states have to say about this. If at some point there was a clear consensus amongst all 50 states about some number of weeks, that would be something I'd be willing to consider. But it would have to be a consensus that was formed by the 50 states.
So I just want to be clear. If anti-abortion groups came to you and said, we want to know what your position is on any federal ban, you would say, no support for a federal ban unless all 50 states voted in favor of a federal ban. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. You mischaracterized my position. What I said was there's going to be all kinds of different positions. In my home state of New Jersey, you can have an abortion up to the 9th month. In the state of Oklahoma, there's no abortion unless the woman's health or her life is at risk. And there's going to be all kinds of different variations in between. If bringing all those together, there was a consensus at some midpoint that could get 60 votes in the United States Senate and come to a president's desk, I'd consider that. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And quite frankly, I want all the states to be able to make their own judgments on this before the federal government even considers weighing in.
So also tonight in a very red state, the state of Kentucky, the Democratic incumbent, he beat a rising star in your party, Daniel Cameron. Cameron was also notably endorsed by Trump. He was embraced by him and embraced Trump himself. Was that a mistake on his part?
Daniel Cameron was a rising star in the Republican Party until he decided to throw his lot in with Donald Trump. I mean, let's face it, Donald Trump is political and electoral poison down ballot. Down ballot, his endorsement has led to Republican defeats in the House, in the Senate rather, and the House in 18. In 20, we lost the United States Senate and the White House. In 22, we underperformed miserably. And tonight, you're seeing us lose again. Daniel Cameron made a huge mistake by embracing Donald Trump and selling his soul to him. That's what he did. And the voters of Kentucky, very red state, as you noted, gave their verdict on politicians who sell their soul to Donald Trump.
It's looking to be, Governor Christie, a potentially good night for Democrats in Kentucky and Ohio on that ballot measure, even in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Is there a risk here that Republicans are too overconfident that Biden can be beat when it seems like voters seem open, at least, to the Democratic Party and even some of the policies that have been on the table in this off-year election?
Any Republican who's overconfident about beating Joe Biden next year is a foolish Republican. The president's incumbency will be a very strong tool on his behalf. And so if he is the candidate for the Democratic Party, which it appears he will be, he will always be a difficult opponent. He defeated an incumbent president himself just 3 years ago. So I don't think anybody should be overconfident. But what we should be concerned about is if we're going to absolutely put a loser up against him. Donald Trump lost to him in 2020. Donald Trump has led us to losers up and down the ticket for the House, for the Senate, and in governorships. This has been a disastrous run for the Republican Party, with Trump picking these candidates and embracing them, and independent voters all across this country rejecting him. That's why, Abby, I've been out there making the case against Donald Trump in a way that none of these other candidates have. The other 4 candidates are going to be on the stage with me tomorrow night, all raised their hand and said they would support Donald Trump even if he was a convicted felon. I mean, this is the path to defeat. We have to defeat Donald Trump in the primary to have any chance of beating Joe Biden in the general election. That's why I want to continue to make this argument on the debate stage. Folks should go to chrischristie.com and donate to keep me up on that stage, because I'm the only one who's willing to take it directly to Donald Trump.
All right, Governor Christie, thank you.
Anne-Marie, open question. Which of these many off-year elections got your attention?
Virginia was definitely the most important one, not just because of how close it is to Washington, D.C. Many felt potentially this could be a referendum on President Joe Biden, and given the fact that we have seen him struggle in the polls, but also for the fact that Glenn Youngkin really was trying so hard, spent a ton of money, spent a ton of personal time and capital to try to flip Virginia so that both the state legislature, both chambers, the House of Delegates and the Senate, were red. And actually what he has now is a very divided government with Democrats controlling both of those. And the reason why this was so important is because donors were hoping he'd potentially be a last-minute addition for 2024.
Right.
I think the fact that Virginia didn't go fully red, you can park that. But also, what does this mean? He's now a lame duck governor. What does this mean for his remaining 2 years? And then is he going to mull a 2028 bid?
Right. What is the question here about anecdote or fact that the Trump people don't show up if Trump isn't part of the election?
Well, I'm not sure if the Trump people didn't show up. You have to look at some of these races in Kentucky, in Ohio as well, that it was very specific for individuals or measures that they were voting for. What was clear last night, whether or not Trump voters showed up or not, what was clear last night is that abortion is still a key issue for voters. And these aren't just Democrat voters, these are independents as well. So for Democrats looking at November of 2024, they are going to spend heavily, they're going to campaign heavily on abortion. You can see some of the change of tone when they talk about abortion. They're now talking about as a freedom, a right. And this is what the president said yesterday when he released a statement, that he was so happy to see in these election results that Americans once again came out to protect their freedoms. This is how they're trying to shape the discussion when they talk about abortion.
Matt Gaetz made a lot of news earlier this week when he basically took out the Speaker of the House. He's continuing to make news now. According to a huge scoop from NBC News, Gaetz trashed the House Republicans' impeachment inquiry into Biden during a private online fundraiser with big GOP donors. You might be confused, and I guess we can see that Matt Gaetz and fundraiser appearing in the same sentence. You'd be right to feel that way. It's because Matt Gaetz loves to brag about the fact that he gets all this small dollar donations and not checks from corporations and fat cats, but we'll revisit that. These are quotes from that fundraiser, that online fundraiser that took place September 26th. This is Matt Gaetz speaking. I don't believe that we are endeavoring upon a legitimate impeachment of Joe Biden. They're trying to engage in a forever war of impeachment, and like many of our forever wars, it will drag on forever and in a bloody draw. I just don't get the sense that it is for the sake of impeachment. I think it's for the sake of having another bad thing to say about Joe Biden. From that same report, Gaetz told the attendees he meant no offense to Representatives Jim Jordan and James Comer, who are overseeing the closely watched probes, but he added, according to the recording, if this was serious, we would have sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden, which is ironic because just last month, Matt Gaetz took to Twitter and said, term limits vote, balanced budget vote, single subject spending bills, release J6 tape, subpoena Hunter, impeach Biden. We must do these things. The American people have waited long enough. A little bit of change of heart from the maybe gubernatorial candidate for the Republican nomination in Florida one day, Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, the only part I'll disagree with is not a change of heart. It's a change of language depending on the audience and message based on the audience. So look, there's two different issues here. One is the fundraiser and the other is what he said in the fundraiser. I'm actually okay with the fundraiser. That might surprise you guys, but he said he's not taking corporate PAC money, and unless he violated that pledge, and there were folks who were sending in corporate super PAC money to him there. If he violates that pledge, then I'm done with him. He has no redeeming qualities left at that point, etc. But if it's just people who are wealthy that are giving him money, that's still allowed. And you can see in Matt Gaetz's proposals for anti-corruption bills, I don't think he's getting corporate PAC money. The corporate PACs despise anti-corruption. They are the corruption. So we'll see if any of those guys were linked to those super PACs, or we might not see. But if they're just wealthy Republicans, that's old school and that's not great, but it's okay. So now in terms of the impeachment stuff, now ironically, he's totally right. When he's behind closed doors, they have no evidence. It's just the impeachment wars back and forth, except for the fact that there was plenty of evidence on Donald Trump and there's no evidence on Joe Biden, and even Matt Gaetz knows it, and Rosendale knows it. They all know it. Even the most extreme Republicans know it. So he's right about that too. So what's he wrong about? Lying in public that he's in favor of impeachment and that, oh boy, they got this, right? So you tell me Matt Gaetz changed his mind between that tweet and that closed door meeting with the fundraiser? Get out of here. He didn't change his mind. He lies to you on a regular basis when he's in public. And that's to rile you guys up. Oh yeah, we got by. Oh yeah, we can do impeachment. In reality, of course, and they don't want to break the spell. Every right-wing host, every right-wing politician tells you they got plenty of evidence on Biden when they don't have a single piece of evidence. If a bunch of them came out and were like, half the Fox News hosts were like, okay, fine, we'll admit it. We have no evidence at all. We just don't like Joe Biden and we just want to smear him and impeach him because you guys correctly impeached Donald Trump. No, they're never gonna say that. So Matt Gaetz has to lie because his voters demand that lie. They want Biden to be guilty, whether he's actually guilty or not. So that's why he lies to them.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, obviously, I can't stand Matt Gaetz. Hope he has an allergic reaction to his new hair product or something like that. Like, I'm not a fan, but I am here for this, for him, giving the Democrats sound bites and going after the other Republicans. I may be misremembering, but I feel like generally speaking, in the pre-Trump era, you didn't have a lot of infighting on the right. That was always my thing with them. Is like, man, they stick together generally. It don't matter what your crimes are. If you got the R by your name, they'll line up and circle the wagons. But so nowadays, I'm kind of digging it, watching them be at each other's throats like this, and the fallout of the McCarthy thing and all that. And Matt Gaetz is right at the forefront of it. Again, I'm no fan, but like you said, he is right about this impeachment stuff. And like earlier in the week, when he stands up in Congress and starts to talk, at first I see that and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to hear this guy talk. But then he stands up there and he's like, McCarthy and his ilk, They're not going to be able to keep calling Biden a senile old man as long as he keeps wrecking them in every single negotiation they have. And all of a sudden, I'm like, all right, hear him out. Let's let him finish. Let's see where he goes with this. Because as long as they're sniping at each other like this, I'm kind of just sitting in the corner eating my popcorn. You know what I mean? So it's the only thing Matt Gaetz has done that I've been in favor of.
Yeah, well, look, I'll add two quick things to that. One is that, here was the second thing he said in that speech that was even better. He said he referenced all the lobbyist money and the corporate PAC money that the other Republicans are taking.
Yeah.
Okay, that is some good stuff right there. That is true, and even progressives haven't really had the courage to call that out. I don't know why, and I don't know what they're waiting for. But so give credit to Matt Gaetz on that. And then the last thing is, I think that there's a lot of value in infighting within a party. You're not supposed to just go bow your head to whoever the leader is and no, I don't have any opinion. Oh, you're not doing the right things, you're doing what the donors want. Okay, no, I bow my head, we have unity. No, I'm not in favor of that at all. That's not the problem with the Freedom Caucus. The problem is that their ass, at least half of them, are mental. Like shut down the Department of Justice because they're investigating our daddy. Come on, come on. If they weren't lunatics, then it would be an interesting fight, right?
Defund the FBI. I mean, that's basically what they want to do as well, which is the same, has the same roots as what Cenk's talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, this infighting has gone on a little longer than Kevin McCarthy. It forced John Boehner out. It forced Paul Ryan to throw his hands up. So this Freedom Caucus has caused a lot of problems for the Republican caucus in the House, and I think it's going to be a difficult couple of years for them, you know, personally because of this. And Matt Gaetz is now liberated, not that he's ever been silent, liberated to say whatever the hell he's thinking about, which is what he's doing now, talking about the impeachment, what he did on the House floor the other day. He's going to be a force that's just going to speak his mind in ways that he hasn't before, and he's got Trump behind him.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.
Former New York Commissioner Bernie Kerik has been subpoenaed to testify in the Fulton County, Georgia trial against Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. This is, of course, the election meddling case that accuses Donald Trump and his co-conspirators of attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election with a slate of fake electors. Now, what's interesting about this story is that the attorney representing Kerik is saying that, well, maybe, but we got to get some immunity first. And that, of course, has led to a lot of questions in regard to whether or not Kerik could cooperate with prosecutors in this case. Now, I want to throw cold water on the notion that he's going to provide any damning evidence in regard to Donald Trump. I'm going to make my case on that in just a moment. But first, here are the details. Kerik's lawyer, Tim Parlatore, is demanding that his client be granted immunity in exchange for testifying, pointing out that prosecutors indicated in the indictment that Kerik was a co-conspirator in the case. While not named in the indictment, CNN previously reported that Kerik is co-conspirator number 5. So he is in fact facing charges in the Georgia case, okay? Not to be mistaken with the special counsel Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump and election meddling. Now, Fulton County prosecutors allege that Kerik took part in several meetings with lawmakers in Pennsylvania and Arizona, and states that these were states that Trump was, of course, contesting following the 2020 presidential election. So that includes the meeting that he attended at the White House on November 25th, 2020 with a group of Pennsylvania legislators. Trump, Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, and Jenna Ellis were also present for that meeting. Now, the lawyer, Parlatore, wrote, "No competent criminal attorney would allow Mr. Kerik to testify absent a grant of immunity." The judge says that Kerik will invoke his Fifth Amendment rights and refuse to answer questions unless he receives written assurance that he will not be prosecuted. The judge also claims that when he previously expressed this demand to the district attorney's office, they told him, quote, if we wanted to indict Carrick, we would have already done so, but refused to put assurances in writing. So that is what he wants. He wants assurances in writing. And finally, he writes in his letter to the prosecutors, to be clear, Mr. Carrick has done nothing wrong and rejects your claim that he is a co-conspirator in any alleged criminal conduct. You made the public accusation, so now you must live with the consequences of Mr. Carrick and presumably all other alleged unindicted co-conspirators invoking their Fifth Amendment rights and refusing to testify. Now, Carrick is not one of the unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators described in Jack Smith's indictment of Trump in the federal 2020 election probe. Nonetheless, Parlatore basically also suggested that Fulton County prosecutors coordinate with the special counsel, Jack Smith, to ensure that he has immunity in that case as well. Now, 2 of the 19 defendants, pro-Trump lawyer Kenneth Chesebro and former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, are actually set to go on trial on October 23rd. And news just broke before showtime indicating that he is potentially willing to testify against Sidney Powell. But I do not think, and this is just my prediction, that he is going to provide any damning evidence or testimony in regard to Donald Trump. Now, why do I think that? Just 3 years ago, Donald Trump did a big favor for Carrick, who had been convicted of tax fraud and had been sentenced to 3 years in prison as a result. In fact, here's Carrick discussing that on television.
Well, when I answered the phone, the person on the other end said he was getting the president on the line. The president came on, and he started out the conversation saying that he was in the process, as we were speaking, of signing my full presidential pardon, which would expunge my federal record. I did get emotional. I got extremely emotional. I can't tell you exactly what I said, what he said after that, but you know, it was a good day for me. It was a very happy day for me.
Sure, I know you had your former boss and friend Rudy Giuliani lobbying for you. Some people at this network also lobbied. Did you know this was coming, sir?
No. No, you know, I actually applied for my presidential pardon under President Obama. This has been going on for 4 years. So no, I did not know it was coming. I had no advance notice until the phone rang.
So Cenk, I mean, look, there's no honor among thieves. You never know, but I think it would be shocking if he turned on Trump and testified against him. I really do think this is about Sidney Powell. What do you think?
Yeah, no, right before we got on air, Parlatore, the Carrick's lawyer, went on CNN and he explained, yeah, they have evidence about Sidney Powell. And he said it is not about Rudy Giuliani or Donald Trump. Now, that leads to 2 really interesting conclusions. So first of all, well, actually one's a question, the other one's a conclusion. The question is the prosecutor in Fulton County going to say, sure, I'll take the evidence against Sidney Powell and I'll give you immunity for it? Or does she think that Carrick was so deeply involved that she doesn't want to give immunity just for evidence against Sidney Powell? Well, they probably have fairly strong evidence against. But more importantly, the conclusion is, it is now official that it is throw Sidney Powell under the bus legal strategy, certainly for some of the defendants, and maybe all the way up to Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. And Parlatore explained, oh, Sidney Powell was the one person who was saying things without evidence, and that's why the Trump team got rid of her. It's all her fault. So, okay, now we know the strategy. Everybody's gonna blame Sidney Powell. No, how is Sidney Powell going to react to that? Is she gonna release the Kraken, as she famously said she would on behalf of Trump, but now against Trump? I don't know. I don't know what kind of evidence Sidney Powell has against Trump or Rudy Giuliani, but it looks like they're all turning on her.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're gonna turn on her, and it seems increasingly likely that is what their game plan is, I am curious what she's willing to provide in the form of testimony against the co-conspirators here. We'll see, but you know, when someone else's ass is on the line, all of a sudden loyalties don't matter as much, unless you're in the mob and you don't want to be a rat. We'll see.
Yeah, for